bleib Gangster. Das heißt, mach genau das, was du denkst, klar.
Death Row Records built two entire eras of hip-hop history, and behind both of them sat real artists whose individual stories rarely get told in full. This is the complete arc. From the label's original 90s dynasty to Suge Knight's chaotic 2000s attempt to rebuild it from scratch. 10 real artists, 10 real songs, still on YouTube right now. Here's what actually happened across both chapters of Death Row's history. If stories like this are your thing, hit subscribe right now. Let's get into number 10. Number 10, Above the Law. Gregory Hutchison, known as Cold 107 Tem, led the Pomona group Above the Law on Eazy-E's Ruthless Records, developing a melodic, funk-driven production style he's long maintained directly influenced Dr. Dre's own signature sound. Their 1990 debut, Livin' Like Hustlers, featured guest appearances from NWA members and early production help from Dre himself. And their 1993 follow-up, Black Mafia Life, featured a young Tupac Shakur and showcased the exact template that would soon define an entire genre of West Coast rap. Cold 187 has said, Dre personally offered Above the Law a spot at Death Row's founding, inviting the group to leave Ruthless and join him in building the new label from the ground up. The group declined, choosing to stay loyal to Eazy-E, and watched from the outside as Dre's Death Row built the biggest empire in hip-hop, using a sound Cold 107 has always insisted originated with him first. Describing sessions where Dre sat in the room listening to Above the Law's own tracks before The Chronic was ever recorded. Above the Law eventually did sign to Death Row years later, in the late 1990s after Eazy-E's death, and a stint at Tommy Boy Records, arriving at the label they'd once turned down under completely different circumstances.
Just like the real niggas want it, 'cause I'm an OG for life.
Cold 187 went on to work as the label's musical director during this period, and personally mentored a young Crooked I during Death Row's second era, passing along production knowledge to the next generation of West Coast artists. A producer who helped invent the sound an entire genre would be built on, turned down the label that made it famous, only to join years later, long after the moment that could have changed everything had already passed him by, still fighting decades afterward for the credit he believes history has never fully given him. Number 9. Daz Dillinger, Delmar Arnaud. Known as Daz Dillinger, signed to Death Row at just 19 years old for a reported $5,000 advance, despite going on to co-produce The Chronic, Doggy Style, and All Eyes on Me, three of the most important albums in West Coast hip-hop history. As one half of The Dog Pound alongside Kurupt, he helped build the entire sound the label became famous for, appearing across the label's earliest and most defining releases while still a teenager himself. By 1998, with Death Row collapsing under Suge Knight's legal troubles, Daz released his solo debut, Retaliation, Revenge, and Get Back, and left the label shortly after. In 2001, he filed a lawsuit against Knight and Death Row directly, accusing the label of withholding royalties and manipulating accounting on records that had sold millions of copies, a legal battle that dragged on for years without full resolution. The real fallout came in 2002, when Kurupt shocked Daz by re-signing with Death Row entirely on his own, without any warning to his longtime partner. Daz felt personally betrayed, releasing multiple diss tracks aimed directly at his former partner and calling out the decision in interviews as a genuine act of disloyalty. And Kurupt fired back with his own response record, addressing the accusations directly. The feud between the two men who'd built the Dog Pound together stretched from 2002 to 2005, before they eventually reconciled and returned to making music as a group again. A producer who helped architect Death Row's signature sound for a $5,000 advance spent the label's entire second act suing his own former bosses and feuding with the partner he'd built his career alongside, proof that even the artists who helped build the empire weren't spared its chaos. 2 down, 8 to go, and these stories only get more tangled from here. If this channel is putting you onto stories you can't find anywhere else, hit that subscribe button before we keep going. Alright, back to it. Number 8. Superfly. Priest Brooks, known as Superfly, started as a teenage keyboardist who impressed Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre enough to earn real production credits on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack and Thay Dog Pound's debut, Dog Food. You can even invite your friend, but this costs, baby. Don't get lost, baby. Contributing to 9 songs on that album alone before he'd even turned 25, quickly becoming one of the most in-demand young hands behind Death Row's boards. By 1997, Death Row had him working steadily as an in-house producer while developing his own planned solo debut, an album titled Like It or Not, expected to finally give him his own moment as a featured artist rather than a background contributor. That project never came out. According to several accounts, Superfly's relationship with the label soured after private information about his sexuality became public within the company, souring what had been a genuinely promising internal trajectory, just as his solo career should have been taking off. He left Death Row in 1999 after filing for personal bankruptcy, joining his longtime friend Daz Dillinger to found DPG Records as an independent home for the both of them, a fresh start built entirely outside the label that had shelved his own debut. Fragments of his shelved Like It or Not sessions eventually surfaced years later on a compilation Daz assembled called Dat Whoopty Whoop, giving fans a partial glimpse of what the full album could have been, alongside guest spots for artists like Kurupt and the Lady of Rage. A producer who helped build some of Death Row's most important West Coast records never got his own name on an album cover during his time there, walking away from the label with a shelved project and a fresh bankruptcy filing instead of the solo career his talent had clearly earned him. Number 7. The Lady of Rage. Robin Allen was discovered by Dr. Dre through a 1991 LA Posse record and pulled straight into Death Row, where she rapped across both The Chronic and Doggy Style without ever getting her own album released, quickly earning a reputation among insiders as one of the most technically gifted lyricists on the entire roster. In 1994, Dre played her a beat for the Above the Rim soundtrack that she hated instantly, so convinced it would flop that she personally begged Suge Knight to pull it from the soundtrack entirely before it could damage her reputation. Suge told her okay. Weeks later, riding in the car with Suge's own wife, she mentioned how relieved she was that the track had been cut, and only in that exact moment did she learn it had never actually been removed at all. That song, Afro Puffs, became the biggest hit of her career, reaching number 5 on Billboard's Hot Rap Singles chart, with uncredited backing vocals from Snoop Dogg himself woven throughout the entire track. It should have launched her debut album immediately. Instead, Death Row shelved it while Thay Dog Pound got their turn. Then Tupac arrived and became the label's entire focus. Then Dre walked out on the company he co-founded in March of 1996, taking momentum and resources with him. Her debut, Necessary Roughness, finally arrived in 1997, 3 full years after her breakout hit, on a label already collapsing under Suge Knight's mounting legal troubles.
So what you wanna do is back on up. I'll tap that button.
One of the most technically gifted lyricists on Death Row's entire roster ended up with exactly one hit single and a solo career that arrived only after the moment that made her famous had already passed everyone else by, a pattern that would repeat itself across nearly every artist the label ever signed. Number 6. Therailist. Rick Jones, a rapper from Dallas known as Therailist, had an impromptu audition for Tupac Shakur in Las Vegas in March of 1996, just months before Shakur's murder. A chance encounter that would end up defining the rest of his career. After Tupac died, Suge Knight offered Jones a contract, drawn in part to Jones's uncanny vocal resemblance to the label's fallen star, a similarity Jones has always insisted was simply his own natural style, rather than a deliberate imitation. His defining moment came in 1999, when Death Row rushed out a bizarre compilation called Suge Knight Represents, Chronic 2000, deliberately timed to undercut Dr. Dre's own upcoming album of the same name. Death Row used Jones's voice to complete unfinished Tupac vocal tracks and fuel new posthumous material, feeding years of internet rumors that Tupac was somehow still alive. A controversy Jones found himself at the center of without ever fully choosing it. The danger around him was real too. After finishing a session with Thar Dog Pound, Jones was shot in a drive-by leaving the studio, sustaining serious injuries to his foot, and a security guard working nearby, Dwayne Draws Dupree, was also shot and died from his injuries. By late 2001, Jones had recorded roughly 150 songs for Death Row, with nothing to show for it, watching the label's promises repeatedly fail to materialize, and he finally walked away to pursue his own independent deal elsewhere.
So I grab my Glock and then I bust, nigga.
A rapper hired in part because he sounded like a dead legend, spent years trapped inside one of the strangest, most dangerous chapters in the label's entire history, surviving gunfire and conspiracy theories alike, before ever getting a real shot at his own solo career.
I usually shake commitments, I really need my space.
Number 5. Spiderlock. Curtis Williams, known as Spiderlock,
I'm sick of these emails. Slide through on the DL and get to the
was discovered by Suge Knight in the early 2000s, and Death Row quickly began presenting him publicly as one of the label's new signings, placing him in photo shoots and magazine features under the Thar Row banner.
Love the sex. Our conversation been all over key.
"We never actually had a deal together," he later explained directly, describing how Knight put him on the label's own website, despite no formal contract ever being signed. His only officially released Death Row-affiliated material came through the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack in 2003, contributing the solo track Dysfunctional, alongside comedian Eddie Griffin, plus loose affiliation with Kurupt's own Against the Grain project during the same period.
For the last 2 months, I've been all overseas. I see.
His real breakthrough came somewhere else entirely. In September of 2004, he met rapper Young Buck in Atlanta and performed for him, and a week later in Los Angeles, Young Buck personally introduced him to 50 Cent on the set of the Shorty Wanna Ride video. After freestyling on the spot for one of the biggest names in the genre, Spiderlock signed with G-Unit within 4 months, finally landing the real deal Death Row had only ever pretended to offer him.
But damn, when I seen your face on the MySpace, the homies and everybody.
A rapper publicly branded a Death Row artist in magazines and on the label's own website never actually had a signed contract at all, and it took a chance meeting on a completely different label's video set to finally get him the real deal Death Row had merely dangled in front of him for years without ever following through. Number 4. SKG. Alessia Choice, known as SKG, was still a teenager when she caught Death Row's attention during Suge Knight's post-prison rebuild in 2001. She landed a real credit on the multi-platinum posthumous Tupac album Until the End of Time, contributing to the track Let 'Em Have It, and followed it in 2002 with an appearance on The Dog Pound's 10 Till Midnight. Genuine placements on genuine death row releases that put her voice in front of a real national audience while she was still building her earliest reputation in the industry. Knight publicly named SKG a label priority that same year, placing her name directly alongside Crooked I, Kurupt, and Lisa Left Eye Lopes as artists he intended to personally rebuild the company's future around. An extraordinary vote of confidence for someone still building her earliest reputation, and one of the clearest signals that Knight saw real long-term potential in her. A proper solo project never materialized. As Death Row's second era continued sliding into legal and financial chaos through the mid-2000s, with Knight facing repeated legal troubles of his own, SKG's own momentum stalled out alongside nearly everyone else still on the roster, leaving her with scattered guest features instead of the debut album that had once seemed within reach. SKG rebuilt her career entirely outside the label afterward, publishing memoirs about her time in the industry and becoming, in 2022, the first female rapper from Los Angeles to perform at Coachella, proving her career on her own terms decades after the label first discovered her, entirely independent of the promises that never came through. Number 3. Lisa Left Eye Lopes.
Pretty brown skin, intellect and sexy, and in my world.
Lisa Lopes had already won 5 Grammy Awards with TLC when she made an unexpected move in January of 2002, severing her solo deal with Arista Records over financial frustrations and signing directly with Suge Knight's rebuilt Death Row, planning an entire second solo album under a new persona, NINA, standing for New Identity Not Applicable, a full reinvention of her public identity outside the group that had made her famous.
I'm the best to me, and I always got love for these gangsta streets.
The sessions were real. Death Row's own producer, Darren Vegas, described Lopes as calm and easy to work with in the studio, far from the wild reputation that had followed her through years of tabloid coverage. And she recorded alongside Kurupt and Crooked I, even beginning work on a posthumous duet built from old Tupac Shakur vocals, assembled specifically for the project by his own former engineer.
Chickens, please kill drama. Don't make me pass by and splash puddles of...
Less than 5 months after signing, on April 25, 2002, Lopes was killed in a car accident in Honduras while filming a documentary about a youth camp she was personally building there for underprivileged children, part of charity work she'd committed years of her own life toward. She was 30 years old. The NINA album was never completed, and Death Row's own planned release for it was quietly cancelled for reasons never fully explained.
She's too sweet for TV.
Only one official track from those sessions, 2 Street 4 TV, ever saw release, tucked onto the dysfunctional family soundtrack in 2003. One of the most decorated women in music history spent the final months of her life trying to rebuild something new at a label that was, at that exact moment, fighting just as hard to rebuild itself, and the world never got the chance to hear what either of them could have become together.
Lit off hand in this motherfucking game to win and game.
Number 2. Kurupt. Kurupt already had real Death Row history from the label's original run. But in early 2002, he shocked his own former groupmates by re-signing with the label and becoming its vice president, sparking a genuine feud with his old The Dog Pound partner, Daz Dillinger, who felt personally betrayed by the decision to return to a label he'd fought for years to escape. While mentoring the label's new signings, including Crooked I and Spiderlock, Kurupt released the real single Gangstaville PT3 in 2003, which actually charted in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland through a collaboration with German DJ Tomek. But his planned solo album, Against the Grain, kept getting delayed year after year, even with Kurupt personally overseeing the label's day-to-day operations as its own second-in-command. Answering directly for a release schedule he had genuine authority over, yet still couldn't control. By 2004, an unofficial bootleg titled Originals leaked online because fans had run out of patience waiting for an official release that never seemed to arrive. Kurupt left Death Row for a second time that same year, frustrated with the label's inability to deliver on its own promises, even to its own vice president. Against the Grain finally came out in August of 2005, after Kurupt had already walked away entirely, landing to reviews calling it dead on arrival, a record that should have come out over a year earlier by any reasonable timeline. A man who literally ran the company still couldn't get his own record out on time, closing out one of the strangest ironies in Death Row's entire chaotic second act.
Dynasty here.
Yeah,
Baby boy.
tell me what's all the
Number 1. Crooked I. Long Beach rapper Crooked I signed to Death Row around 2000.
baby, we still stacking money,
What we don't do.
lady, we still.
And Suge Knight quickly positioned him as the label's next franchise player, putting him on the cover of XXL magazine in 2002, and booking him on Jimmy Kimmel Live alongside Suge himself, a level of promotion reserved for artists the label genuinely believed could carry its future.
And we ain't letting suckers in. I got a lovely deal and I own my.
Crooked I recorded 2 full albums during his time at the label, Untouchable and Say Hi to the Bad Guy, both scheduled and promoted, both ultimately unreleased despite real studio time and real label investment behind them.
We still throw them arms up. We still beefing with the pole.
His actual single, Still Thoreau, did make it onto the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack in 2003, giving fans a genuine taste of what the shelved project could have sounded like. Crooked. I later explained the album got pulled specifically when the label went independent and received modest first-week sales projections instead of the near-platinum numbers Suge was used to before his time in prison.
Do whatever he feel. Look at my billboard, I took a shit on Beverly Hills.
His contract expired in November of 2003, and he left Death Row in early 2004 to start his own label, only to receive a cease and desist letter from Death Row when he tried releasing his own independent material shortly afterward, a final act of friction on his way out the door. Say Hi to the Bad Guy eventually leaked online years later, letting fans finally hear what had once been positioned as the label's entire second dynasty plan.
Death Row.
I let them know if they didn't remember. I know some of you.
10 artists, 10 real songs, all still sitting on YouTube, exactly where you can go verify every word of this list yourself.
Let's click to surrender. My game code is winner when it ends December. Scoop your
Crooked I went on to real recognition with the supergroup Slaughterhouse, but the album meant to make him Death Row's next solo star never got its shot, closing out the story of a label that tried, across 2 entire eras, to build something it could never quite finish.